On a warm June evening in 1933 in Camden, New Jersey, hundreds of people pulled their cars into a strange new field. Instead of a barn dance or a county fair, they faced a giant outdoor screen that stretched higher than a two-story building. As dusk settled, flickering images filled the sky, and for the first time in history, Americans watched a feature film not from theater seats, but from the comfort of their own automobiles. This was Richard Hollingshead's drive-in theater, the very first of its kind. That night wasn't just about watching a movie. It was about fusing two of America's greatest obsessions, cinema and the automobile. It was a revolution that turned entertainment into an adventure, created a new kind of social space, and redefined how America fell in love with both the screen and the car. The spark of an idea. Richard Hollingshead wasn't a Hollywood mogul. He was a sales manager for his father's auto parts company. But he had an inventive streak and a deep understanding of the American romance with cars. Legend has it, Hollingshead's idea came from a simple desire. He wanted a way for his mother, who found traditional theater seats uncomfortable, to enjoy movies. He began experimenting in his backyard. He nailed a sheet to trees, perched a projector on the hood of his car, and arranged vehicles at different angles to test sight lines. He even sprayed water from a garden hose to simulate rain, testing whether the experience would still be enjoyable. In 1932, Hollingshead filed a patent for an outdoor theater for automobiles. His design included tilted ramps, so every car had a clear view of the screen, a feature that would define drive-ins for decades. Opening night, June 6, 1933. When the gates opened at his Camden Drive-In Theater, cars rolled in for 25 cents per vehicle, plus 25 cents per passenger. For that price, an entire family could watch a movie under the stars. The inaugural film? A forgotten 1932 comedy called Wives Beware. Hardly a blockbuster, but the novelty wasn't in the movie. It was in the experience. Families picnicked in their cars, couples cozied up on bench seats, children fidgeted with excitement in pajamas, knowing they could fall asleep in the back seat before the movie was over. That night, the world witnessed something new. Cinema no longer belonged only to ornate city theaters. It had become democratic, mobile, and deeply personal. America had discovered the thrill of watching Hollywood from behind a steering wheel. Cars, freedom, and the American dream. The drive-in tapped directly into the mythology of the automobile. By the 1930s, cars were more than transportation. They were symbols of independence. A drive-in theater didn't just show movies. It turned cars into private living rooms, escape pods, and even date-night hideaways. For teenagers especially, the drive-in became sacred ground. It offered freedom from parents, the thrill of being on the road, and the intimacy of sharing a film in the dark with someone special. For families, it was affordable, casual, and inclusive. Crying babies and fidgety kids were no problem when you could simply roll up the windows. In a nation obsessed with motion and modernity, the drive-in fit like a glove. The post-war boom. World War II put Hollingshead's dream on pause, as materials like rubber and steel were diverted to the war effort. But when the war ended, the drive-in theater blossomed. By the late 1940s and 50s, America was bursting with optimism. Suburbs sprawled outward, cars became bigger and flashier, and families craved wholesome leisure. The drive-in answered all three. At their peak in the late 1950s, there were more than 4,000 drive-in theaters across the country. They popped up in cornfields, deserts, and city edges, often advertised by towering neon signs visible for miles. Some weren't just theaters. They were playgrounds with swing sets, diners with car hop service, and even miniature zoos. Going to the drive-in came as American as baseball and apple pie. Drive-ins were marvels of design. Screens towered like monuments, often decorated with rockets, stars, or bold Art Deco shapes. The ramps were carefully engineered so every car had a clear view. Initially, sound came from giant loudspeakers, but these often distorted the audio. In the 1940s, individual in-car speakers became the standard. Metal boxes hung on a cord, clipped to the driver's window. The tinny, crackling sound was part of the charm. By the 1970s, technology shifted again. FM transmitters allowed movies to play directly through car radios, enveloping audiences in stereo sound without rolling down a window. Every technical leap made the drive-in feel more magical, an engineering experiment that doubled as an evening out. Drive-ins weren't just about movies. They were cultural theaters where America's youth defined themselves. In the 1950s, they became hotbeds of rock and roll culture. Teens cruised in convertibles, turned the volume up, and turned the drive-in into an unofficial dance floor. By the 1960s and 70s, the reputation of drive-ins as passion pits solidified. For young couples, they offered privacy away from prying eyes, part of why older generations eyed them with suspicion. But beyond the stereotypes, drive-ins represented belonging. Whether it was a first kiss, a first horror movie that left you sleepless, or the thrill of hanging out with friends on a Friday night, the drive-in cemented itself in the emotional geography of American youth. Trouble on the horizon. By the late 1960s and 70s, storm clouds gathered. Suburban land values soared, making it more profitable to sell drive-in property to developers than to keep running seasonal theaters. Indoor multiplexes with air conditioning and year-round scheduling chipped away at attendance. Television kept families at home, while VCRS in the 1980s offered movies on demand. Drive-ins, once symbols of modernity, began to look quaint and outdated. By the 1990s, fewer than 500 remained. Screens rotted, speakers rusted. Many were bulldozed for shopping malls, warehouses, or housing tracts. The great American experiment of watching movies under the stars was fading into nostalgia. Yet drive-ins never fully died. A few family-owned operations refused to close, weathering the lean years with community loyalty. In small towns, the drive-in was often the only cinema for miles, cherished as a local institution. In recent years, they've enjoyed a surprising revival. Digital projection has lowered costs. The COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 turned drive-ins into safe gathering places once again. Pop-up screens appeared in parking lots, bringing back the magic Hollingshead had imagined nearly a century earlier. Today, about 300 drive-ins still operate in the United States. They stand as monuments to resilience, reminders of how deeply the marriage between cars and movies shaped American culture. Why that night mattered. The opening of Hollingshead's Camden Drive-In in 1933 was more than a quirky business idea. It marked the birth of a cultural phenomenon. It democratized entertainment, making movies accessible to families of all sizes and incomes. It blurred the line between private and public, turning cars into stages for romance, family bonding, and personal memories. It also revealed something essential about America: its genius for reinventing everyday life with technology, its devotion to freedom on four wheels, and its endless appetite for spectacle. That first night in Camden wasn't just the premiere of a comedy film. It was the premiere of a new American way of living.